Okay, so this is looking at stripping the circulation pump of a Volvo CAD 44 marine diesel, although virtually all of the circulation pumps are the same. So the first task is to press out using a suitable mandrel the shaft, which should come out hopefully with the impeller, maybe the rear seal, and possibly even the rear bearing. So I want to press that out down through the hub, and that's going to cause out to drop the impeller, sometimes with the seal intact, where I'm pointing to here. You can see this shaft is one that's broken in service, and that's why this pump's being overhauled. So having removed the shaft, you'd be left with the seal in place sometimes, in which case that's just a case of prizing that seal out. You can see I've already had a go at this one, and that you can access normally through the hole in the side of the pump there, and it's just a case of getting this seal and popping it out. It's got its blue sealant around it because they come ready to install with sealant already. And also there's a rear bearing in the back there as well, which needs to come out. Sometimes again this needs pressing, but this one's pretty loose. There we go. Next job is to pull the hub off. So there's a little jig in order to do that. I'm going to drop the pump straight over there. And I've already put a puller on this one, but normally just bolt the pump down, use a 3-leg puller like so, and then obviously tighten that down with a suitable wrench, and that'll pull off the main hub, which will leave you with, this is the older style bearing, which you have to pack with grease. The new ones are sealed, you'll see that when we build it up. So there's a clip to remove to get that off, and then we'll have to pull that off. Go in with our circlip pliers. We're just going to remove this circlip off the pump in order to get that bearing off. I'll bring you back when that's done. And there we are, off that comes. So we're back with the pump bolted down to the jig and the puller installed. Ready to pull the bearing. Always do this one hand. And off comes the bearing. Leaving behind the shaft, which will push a new bearing onto. So time to give it all a good clean up now. Clean up in there around where the seal will go and the inside bearing. Give the pump a general clean on the outside and clean inside that groove where the big fat seal goes when you fit the pump. So just press that bearing in place and put the circlip on, the retaining clip, to hold that onto the shaft. Pump is now all nicely cleaned up, and I'm just about to push that rear bearing in, so that's sat in there ready to go on the press, ready to just get pushed into place. And here we are, just pushing the rear bearing into place, just using a socket to do it, no special mandrel. That's in. Okay, so we're now pressing the hub onto the front bearing. Nice and gently, mate, take. So I'm now pressing the lightly greased shaft into the pump. It's important that the hub is up against something solid at this stage, because if not, you can push the shaft slightly too far forward. Resistance there, just goes down through the hub. And yet now bottomed out against that bottom plate. Flush with the end of the hub. Okay, so now I'm going to put the seal into the pump. So it comes with its own blue sealant on, but just going to use a little bit of Permatex sealant as well as an additional. Just going to lightly coat this. And then, Harry, can you?
Yeah.
And then this sits down over here. It's important to drive down onto the actual copper piece here. So I've just made a mandrel. It'll just sit over there to force the seal on. Okay, so now we're just going to push that seal all the way down over the shaft using that mandrel. Take it down and locate it into the pump housing. And this is what forms the water seal between the coolant and the front side of the pump. And there we are, that's the seal in place. I can see that the blue sealant has forced its way out. Excellent. If we look down in through here, the seal is bedded down nicely. A bit hard to see down in there. So the next job is to push the impeller onto the shaft, but you have to push it on by a set distance. Therefore, the easiest way I find to do it is to measure between the flat face, the machined face of the pump surface, and the shaft to find the difference, and then I've just turned a mandrel in order to push it on. So I've got 3.5 mil there. I'll work out the difference that we need, and then we'll push it on using the mandrel. So we have to press the impeller in place so that it sits 0.25 plus or minus 0.15 millimeters below the pump housing plane. So that gives us a range of between 0.10 and 0.40 millimeters below the face. So with a bit of calculation, I've worked out that in my mandrel with a 2.2 mil stick out will fit into the impeller like so that as I push it on, that'll contact the end of the shaft, and then I'll put my pump or my impeller at the right spacing below the face. So this is pressing it down with the mandrel in the middle. Once the mandrel hits or contacts with the end of the shaft, then that'll be the impeller at the right spacing. It is important, however, that the end of the shaft is blocked from moving, because otherwise you can push the shaft too far through. and they can protrude out the front of the pump.
That is now the impeller pushed onto the shaft. It's set the right amount with a flat with a straight edge between the machined face. You can check with a set of feeler gauges just for the right amount of gap. If you're going to make a mandrel to push this on, then you'll need to do your own measurements in order to make sure that you make the part of the mandrel that sticks out, which then contacts with the end of the shaft, the right depth. Yeah, that's it's in, pushes on, and therefore you can't push it down too far. But like I say, you need to measure your own depth for that.